a visitor in the 60-yard backyard. Yesterday we released a video about sighting in a scope, a speed ring scope specifically for your crossbow. One of the problems you might run into, and I noticed when I was shooting that video, was that at 20 yards you might be dead on. Then you've adjusted with your turrets, right? Up and down, left and right, all that good stuff. And then what happens when you've got it dialed in at 20, but now you're shooting at 30, and you still have to adjust not just the elevation, but the windage, the left to right, right? What do we do with that? Because now we're at 30, the speed ring isn't going to adjust our windage. The speed ring is going to adjust our up and down. A couple things you can do. First of all, double check it at 20 and make sure you're dead on. You might need to adjust a little bit with the turrets in order to pull that back in perfect at 20, because those differences are going to be magnified at longer distances. That's tip number one. Tip number two, the next thing you can do, make sure you're not shooting in the wind, right? That's going to affect your shot. Not too much at 30, but at 50 it's going to start making your shot go left or right. Third thing you can do, make sure you're shooting off a rest, because that wobble, right, that shake is going to make your arrows deviate. The next thing I would look at as far as distance shooting is concerned, and this is something people don't take into account, I don't think, enough, but you'll want to make sure you are pulling the trigger properly, okay? Seems like basic stuff, but pulling the trigger, when you're pulling that trigger, make sure you're pulling with the center of the pad of your finger, not the tip and not the knuckle, right? Because if you're pulling with the tip, you're going to be pushing, in effect, that crossbow, and it may push the shot a little bit to the left. If you're right-handed. If you're pulling with the knuckle, right, you might be pulling that shot too far to the right. And that's one of those things that can affect arrow flight. Obviously, we want to look at arrows too. Make sure you're using the right nock, the right arrow, all that stuff, because any of those things can create inconsistencies in arrow flight. If you're using pretty much what came with a crossbow, that shouldn't be a problem. The last thing that I want to point out, that I want to suggest to you might be your problem at 30 yards, is canting. Make sure your crossbow is level at 20, right? Or if your scope zero's at 50 or what have you, or 40 or whatever your zero is. At that zero distance, it's not going to make a difference whether you're canting the crossbow, because that center, the very center of that scope, is going to be your zero reticle, right? The problem is going to be, what are we doing at 30 yards or 40 yards? If you're canting the crossbow a little bit, think about what we're doing, right? Right now, the reticle's in here, the line in the middle is right straight up and down. If I'm canting it a little bit, all of a sudden now my shot is going to the left at 30 yards, even further to the left at 40 yards, because that line is no longer up and down, it's at an angle. And the farther we go down that line, the farther distance out we go, the more that reticle has moved to the left. Conversely, if I move it to the right and I'm canting to the right, it would be the opposite. So you've got that as well. Now, scopes, some of them have built-in levels. That's great. If they don't have the level for you, you can affix a little level right here on the stock of the crossbow. You could buy a little cheapo level and just put it on there, double-sided tape that, or glue or whatever. That'll work great. Sometimes the rest has a level built in, but that doesn't mean I can't the crossbow, right? Doesn't guarantee that I'm not shooting level. I can put a level on here before I lock it down, right on the rail, right? Don't really want to do that when it's cocked, but you can put a level on the rail to make sure that that crossbow is level, seated perfectly level. Canting is probably the biggest reason that you're inaccurate, that you're getting windage problems at distance. I hope that helps. I hope you're enjoying Crossbow Appreciation Month. Until next time, all hail Bunjie.